Okay, guys, I'm going to be talking about the Umbrella Academy Netflix series, season one and season two. I can just say right off the top of my head that I was compelled to watch this from the very first episode all the way until the last uh, on both seasons. I found that season two actually sucked me in a bit more than season one. Season two really pulled out all the stops, maybe even had a little bit more of a budget, and it didn't disappoint. I can say that overall, despite some problems and some very powerful criticisms by other YouTubers, especially on season two, that despite these problems, this was an overwhelming success. It was successful in appealing to me. It was successful in getting good scores on sites like Rotten Tomatoes, and it was just successful in leaving the audience wanting more, both seasons. Now, it has problems. And to be honest with you, I had heard about these problems before I had even watched the first episode of season one. And it was after I had seen a lot of YouTube videos criticizing, in particular, season two of this show, that I finally went ahead and said, well, so many people are talking about how it has become overly woke that I decided I needed to actually click on it and watch it. And I had seen this on Netflix for quite a while. I mean, every time I started up my Netflix, I saw, the preview, the trailer, or multiple for the Umbrella Academy. It was recommended to me on Netflix from the very beginning, from its release. But I just had too many other things to do. I had too many other things to watch, and it's just ironic that a lot of the criticism about season two of this show actually pushed me actually to go and watch the thing from the very beginning. And I can report that, wow, even despite having heard a lot about the criticisms of season two and its maybe its SJW leanings, I actually still enjoyed it. In fact, when I watched season two with this stuff in mind, I forgot about these criticisms because the story is so well done and it's so weird and wacky and different than a lot of other things. Um, I just forgot all about these criticisms, and I can call it season one and two a resounding success. I want to see more. And it's one of those shows that even though I don't binge watch things, I'll actually slow myself down and watch one or two episodes of something, and then maybe the next week watch another one or two episodes. I actually ended up binge watching this. Particularly, I did even the most amount of binge watching on season two, the season that has the most criticism online. And we'll get to that. But let's just see, what we have on the tomato meter scores and the audience score. We have an overall rating on the tomato meter of 82%, and 87% on the average audience score. And that's counting both season one and season two in its totality, if you will. Now, I'm going to take a look at both of these seasons, and I'm not going to be doing a rotten review because this certainly isn't a rotten show. I'm just going to be taking a look at what people thought when they did not think it was the greatest. What criticisms do they have? Do the average audience members that leave a critique on Rotten Tomatoes, do they have the same critiques that I hear from a lot of prominent YouTubers about this show? In fact, are they going to tell me in these reviews that it's got too much political correctness in season two? Are they going to tell me it went too woke? Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. I haven't looked through them to spoil it for myself. Um, but speaking of spoilers, I'm going to probably talk about spoilers and read reviews, show reviews of things that might be spoilers for people that haven't watched this. So probably if you're not wanting to be spoiled about anything, there are a few things that can be spoiled in this story. Don't watch this review. Watch somebody's that doesn't go into spoilers, because I'm probably going to inadvertently spoil things if you haven't watched this. But in any case, let's get into season one. And season one has a 75% certified fresh on the tomato meter and an 85% audience score. Now, right off the bat, you can see that season one has 3,700 plus user reviews. or user ratings. And I took a look at season 2, and it's got like 1/10. And so I would say that a lot of people haven't watched season 2 yet, or haven't watched all of it yet, which makes sense. Season 2 is relatively new as of the time I'm making this video in August of 2020. But everybody's seen season 1 that's probably interested in it, I would think. Still, not a lot of user ratings, but you can say that about a lot of things on Netflix, right? Because you have to subscribe, first of all. So let's get into it and look at the actual audience reviews, like I do on an episode of Rotten Reviews. On Rotten Reviews, I won't read 5-star reviews because I don't find value in them. I'm going to actually read some here, but of course I'm looking for more critique than just people saying how great it is. I want to find out if they thought it was too woke, like a lot of YouTubers think it is. And I'll give you my opinion on that too when we get to season 2. But let's get right into season 1. 5 stars right at the top. Find it interesting and exciting. Good dialogues, good plot, tragic and funny at the same time. Love it. Well, yeah, it was a story that had it had a big bad. It had something to motivate the heroes, and it was very exciting, but at other times it was sad, and it didn't leave you. It didn't end the season 1 with a conclusion that made you walk away from it feeling uplifted that the big bad had been defeated. In fact, season 1 ended up on kind of a kind of partially sad cliffhanger where you knew there was more to come, but it didn't leave you wanting to pump your fist in the air and feel like that. So yeah, I'll agree that it was tragic and funny, but 3 stars on the next one here. There were some annoying decision making with the character, but so far, just with a bit more improvement on the story, I think it will be great. Well, I disagree. I think it's still great. Yeah, I think the characters, some of them were not 100% fleshed out. Like, it wasn't clear to me on what exactly their powers were. In particular, it wasn't clear to me that the guy that had I'm going to forget some of their names because I'm just fresh off watching this, but it wasn't clear to me that in particular the spaceman character who was partially turned into an ape by a serum, it wasn't clear to me what his powers were before he had that serum injected into him. So on one hand, I think the world building is really great in season 1, where it doesn't like dump a lot of explanation on what's going on at the beginning like a lot of shows would do. It kind of unfolds the world building as it unfolds the characters and shows you what is happening. It really shows you a lot of things, but no real detailed explanation of what went on before or exactly how it all works. And that's kind of detrimental to some of the characters, in which you see that, yeah, they're kind of superpowered now in different ways, but you don't know exactly how they started out. Like in particular the spaceman character, what was superpowered about him before he had the serum? I mean, he was one of the 43 babies that were mysteriously born to women that were just magically pregnant, and one of the 7 that were collected into the Umbrella Academy. But why was he special, like before the serum? That part wasn't clear to me. There were other things with the characters that weren't clear to me, like yes, Diego, the character that's really good with knives and hand-to-hand combat, he's not so much super powered as incredibly, well trained. I mean, he's incredibly well trained, but is throwing knives, was it a superpower? It's kind of shown that he throws knives kind of like how the characters in Wanted, the movie Wanted, throw bullets around from guns. It shows that a little bit, where he can bend the knives to his will around corners and such, but it's shown just so sparingly that you can't really categorize it as a superpower. So it's kind of unclear to me, just where the limits of these characters are, where their baseline is, and how far they can take things. They try to unfold this a bit with the characters, the way they unfold the world building of the story, but it's just not 100% satisfying. So I can see that, yeah, the characters do need more work. They needed more work in season 1. We got a little bit more in season 2, but we got more in season 2 on their personal tastes and personalities, more so than their superpowers. but we'll get into that with season two. Um, when I get a comment here that's 5 stars and it says great show to watch, yeah, it is, but I'm looking for a little bit more than that. Um, 4 stars. The Umbrella Academy has some great characters and entertaining banter, and moments between them, even when the plot is somewhat convoluted and its ending left incomplete on a cliffhanger. Yeah, well, I agree with that in that despite the fact that it ended on a cliffhanger, despite the fact that it didn't resolve the main issue that was put forward at the beginning of the story, despite that, it was very satisfying and I was sucked into it. And what I mean by it didn't resolve the main thing that was put forward at the beginning, well, we start off being shown and told in narration even that these 7 people that are taken into the Umbrella Academy, they are, the mystery that starts the whole thing. Where did they come from? How did all these 43 women become magically pregnant overnight and have these kids on the same day? It kind of teased us that that would be something that the series would be answering, and yet it never does. So this is kind of unresolved, and it's still unresolved at the end of season two. It's almost like they forgot about this. They resolved other things. They resolved story arcs. They resolved things with the villains in a couple of different ways. But they did not resolve the overall mystery to this. They didn't. It's like they completely forgot about it. Like they didn't even kind of tease you along with a little bit more on their origins or how these 43 babies were born. No, it never even goes into this again. It's like it was completely overlooked, and I think that's a flaw because even if in season 3 they start telling us more about this, why did they wait till season 3? I mean, it's very strange. It kind of leaves you just kind of unsatisfied in that way, and I consider it the thing that this whole story opened with. I don't know if the original Dark Horse comic series from 2007, 2008, I don't know if it opened the same way, but this TV show, it opened with this as the central driving thing, this mystery about these powered kids who grow up in this Umbrella Academy. It opened with that, and then it just completely forgot about it. Yeah, that wasn't good, but still, I agree, 4 stars. I would not, personally, I would not rate this lower than 4 stars. I still think, despite even season two's big flaws, that it still ended with 4 stars for me. It's one of the rare cases where I think the critics are right. When the critics say it's between 85 and 88%, 88% of the critics, even 85%, even 80% of the critics, right? You could say, consider this fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. It's one of the rare times that, they really agree with the audience. And that's not something you see, especially with sci-fi and fantasy shows on streaming services. You just don't find the critics and the people agreeing like this. So it's a rare outlier. I'm not sure why the critics and the audience agree, but they do. Let's see, we have 4 stars. I thought this was a fantastic version of the original Dark Horse comics, especially the nod to the first panel in every graphic novel where an umbrella is in scene, showing the start of a new story. Yeah, every story kind of starts with the opening scene leading up to an umbrella showing up on some piece of the scenery, and yes, you can tell it's very comic booky. It's meant to call back to the comics, and I didn't read the comics, but I could see what they were going for, and apparently somebody into the comics appreciated it. But continuing, it took me a while to start watching this series, but when I did, I was completely hooked on binge watch the whole series and 2 nights twice. I'll agree with that too. For some reason, I wasn't really pulled into clicking on it and watching it when it was first released, and yet somehow people talking about it online, even negatively, made me start watching the first episode, and again, like this reviewer says, I was hooked as well, and I binge watched it, and I don't normally do that. Casting seems to be fantastic, and Ellen Page is just excellent for that role as Vanya. I almost forgot to mention Hazel and Cha-Cha as time-traveling assassins. Yeah, there's a lot of strange stuff taken from different things. There's elements of this in different stories, different TV shows from even 30 years ago. A lot of it, in particular, season two kind of reminded me of Quantum Leap in a lot of ways. Quantum Leap had a lot of the same, it gave me a lot of the same feels. It kind of went into the woke stuff too. And I really liked Quantum Leap back in the days. I was a teenager when it was new and it was airing on TV. And it kind of reminded me of that, especially season two. But it's got things pulled from Harry Potter. It's got things that give you a sense of sci-fi shows, magic and science technology. It's got some alien aspect to it. Uh, Really, in season two, it goes into the alien angle, where season one it kind of doesn't. But anyway, I'm really interested in finding reviews that aren't 4 and 5 stars. And on page two, I'm coming a half a star review from August 6, 2020, meaning it's from about a week ago. Boring, boring, and boring. Well, no, but I think maybe if somebody had watched just the first episode, it does kind of drag on through some of the stuff, the first 2 or 3 episodes. But boring, no, it's just weird enough to keep you watching. I think the most boring episodes would be found in season two. In particular, the character of Vanya is on a farm, and the plot just kind of slows down while she's discovering that she's having a romance with a married woman on a farm. It's just weird enough to keep you watching, and it goes into woke territory. But boring, just outright boring, no, it wasn't all there. I mean, if you expected nonstop explosions, then yeah, maybe you're going to be bored. But no, I think that if you sit and watch any of the Harry Potter movies, they're a lot more boring than this show is. But let's move on. I'm looking for less than stellar reviews. Well, I found a 3-star review. This first season was a painfully average show with some really good moments. The action sequences were fun and fresh, the music choices were spot on, and the visual effects were almost movie quality and probably expensive. I also loved some of the characters, Klaus, number 5, Cha-Cha, and Hazel, but I also hated some of the characters, mostly Luther and Allison. The show can be predictable, cliche, and mind-numbingly boring, often excessively foreshadowing. Yeah, I agree with that. If you take any of the individual elements out of this show, and by themselves, yes, they're cliche, by themselves, you've seen many of them before, but putting them all together like this, very original, very compelling, makes you want to binge watch it. I will say, as this reviewer did, that the music choices, which are mostly pop music and rock music that's been put in, they are fantastically well fitting and suck you into it, and it very much reminded me of Guardians of the Galaxy, where the same effect was achieved by putting older pop songs and rock songs together in certain places. And a lot of things have tried to copy Guardians of the Galaxy in that regard and failed miserably. They really pulled it off here, and it's the first time I've seen it pulled off outside of Guardians of the Galaxy, the first movie. I really appreciated it. It was part of what sucked me into it. It worked 100%. 2.5 stars, July 29, 2020. The show is as boring and as ordinary as number 7's character until the final 2 episodes. The show is only interesting when Klaus is on screen. I disagree. In fact, I think Klaus is like one of the reasons that the show really took a turn for the woke in the second season. I'm not saying it's bad because of that. I'm just saying that it was a little bit distracting. The stuff in season 2 went a little bit too far, and it really skirted with doing what a lot of shows do and going too far and distracting too much and overpowering the story and really putting a bad taste in people's mouths. It did not do that. It did not. I was still sucked in, but I could see it there. And it was a little bit distracting. And Klaus was part of that because he wasn't just somebody summoning ghosts that was discovering his abilities were a little bit more than he thought they were. Klaus wasn't just a weird guy. Klaus wasn't just a drug user with addiction problems. Klaus also took a turn for having, a gay romance that just overpowered everything else about his character. and it wasn't necessary to the story, and it just mixed with a lot of other stuff at the same time, and really threatened to become too distracting to where the story was trying to go. But I'll give them credit, they didn't go too far with it. It didn't cross over to the point, in my opinion, that I wanted to just shut the show off. It was just a little bit distracting, and it was dangerously close to getting too far into woke land, but it didn't go all the way. Now, when I say other prominent YouTubers have said that it did, and they've railed on about it a lot and still are, they're really sensitive to these things more than I am, because they've focused on, a lot of their old shows, their series, like, for example, Star Wars and Star Trek and Doctor Who. They've been so upset by just the bad story writing combined with the wokeness that have, ruined their franchises, so to speak, that when they saw some of this stuff in season 2 of Umbrella Academy, it really set them off. They're on a hair trigger for these things. I'm not on that hair trigger, so for me, I saw it there and it was distracting, but it didn't like bring this down to a 7 out of 10 like people are saying. No, I still consider this right up there, 8, 9 out of 10, worth watching and worth binging. But when we get to the season 2 reviews, I'm thinking we might see more comments on this. We're in season 1 reviews now. 3 stars, July 29, 2020. Writing is a bit cheesy, but the overall concept and characters were good. No, I don't think it was too cheesy. I think it fit with the weirdness of this. It was supposed to be weird and cheesy, and I appreciated it. It didn't take itself too seriously. I thought it had the right mix of, it knew when to take things serious and it knew when to get stupid and cheesy. I think it was beautiful. Again, it worked with the music in that regard too. So I don't think the writing was a bit cheesy by accident or by mistake. I think it was a bit cheesy when it was supposed to be a bit cheesy. I consider that a plus. So I don't see why that would bring it down to 3 stars, but 3 stars is still a positive review, right? I mean, this person isn't saying it's bad. They're still at 3 stars, which normally if I were doing a rotten review, I refuse to read things that are above 3 stars, because 3 stars is still saying it's okay, or maybe even a little better than okay. So let's move down, and again, we have nothing but 5-star reviews until we get to 1.5 stars from July 22nd. Wow. This series is trash, bloated with more plot holes than a donut shop after a shootout, and far too obsessed with its own musical score to care about pacing and genuine character development. There's so much potential here that ends up being squandered by ridiculous cinematography and amateurish attempts to engage the audience through mysteries that consistently pay off in the poorest ways. So basically everything that I liked about it, this person doesn't like, because again, I'll say that they don't do a lot of world building up front with explanations on how everything works. They just throw it in there and show you this stuff going on. And they do it in a visual style that's meant to keep you interested. And, we're not just talking about Dutch camera angles. We're talking about every trick in the book thrown in, even some I hadn't quite seen done in these ways before. And I found it refreshing and exciting. And apparently this really rubbed some people the wrong way. I think, yes, it isn't explained. You're kind of like going through and showing you things and doing the world building over multiple episodes, kind of like peeling back things for the viewer. And this can rub people the wrong way if they're not used to it, and it leaves you with things that are never quite explained, even to my satisfaction. For example, you have people time traveling with briefcases, which you're never shown how they work or what's in the briefcase, or what the limitations are to these briefcases, what powers them, etc. A lot of things that a sci-fi show, even a lot of fantasy shows would have done, is give you, some kind of background on how this technology or magic works, what are its limitations, etc. But you don't get a lot of this. You get a little few more crumbs as the episodes go on, but no, your world building is pretty much all painted by the brush stylistically on the screen and not really explained to you. But it's good enough where you're sucked in so much that you're never wondering, well, how do the briefcases work? It's not until you've already enjoyed the series and you've come to the end of even both of the shows that you're really wondering, how do the briefcases work and how come they never explained it? And these were things I didn't ask myself until the final episode had finished of the second season. And for me, that proves that the writing is good, because the writing was good enough to keep me from wondering these things or thinking they're distractions or thinking they're flaws until I had finished watching it and actually contemplated it a bit more. And for me, I think that's a success. I think that the producers, the team behind this, I think the writers, I think they pulled off a success, because if they kept the audience from thinking about these things until the show was completed, till it had been watched, then I have to clap my hands to them. They pulled off a perfect success. So for somebody to say that it wasn't, well, no, I think what it is this is somebody that wasn't sucked in by the style of doing things. And, this isn't the way you would do it in Star Trek. For example, you would have things overly technically explained. You would have just a lot of detail on how, for example, the time travel worked or what its limitations are. And if you come from that type of that type of show and you try to apply that to this is more like Harry Potter type thinking mixed in, where not only is stuff kind of semi-magical or outright magical, but at times as the story progresses, things are added onto it. Things are more nailed down where they weren't before, maybe even to the point where you might think it's a little bit undoing what was assumed from before. The writers expect you to assume a lot of things, and that's something that even something like Harry Potter did, where by the third or fourth movie you're like, wow, how many more magical things can they throw into this to get the characters out of trouble? Well, it kind of had some of that stuff going along, but again, I think the writing, the wackiness of it, the soundtrack was good enough where I didn't really nitpick these things until I had already enjoyed it all. So again, nothing but a success there. But I understand where the criticism's coming from. 2.5 stars. Watched this right after the plot of The Warrior Nun. I gave The Warrior Nun half a star. Make your own conclusions. Well, I can't speak to Warrior Nun because I haven't clicked on that yet either, but I'm sure I will. Let's move on. 3 stars. Pass the time, perfect description. If season 2 does not deliver better, I am not committing more than a few episodes. Well, I think season 2 delivered better, and the ratings show that it did as well, because the audience and critic scores on season 2 are higher than season 1. And I agree with those scores, because for me, season 2 worked better, had me sucked in more. Even though it went more woke, I think season 2 did a better job of getting me to binge watch it, so I consider it better than season 1. Season 1 I thought skirted more to where it would be a little bit more boring. Season 2, no. Despite having a lot of stuff in it that rubbed people the wrong way, season 2 I thought it was more compelling than season 1. Half a star. It was the worst TV series I ever watched. How the fuck it got featured anywhere? Waste of time and brain, so many loopholes. Well, first of all, if loopholes, maybe you're thinking of plot holes or problems with the time travel. If you're nitpicking that, well, there's no way to do any of that without having these loopholes. Plot holes and loopholes, well, the only thing that bothered me in that regard was that in some episodes, I'd say in 2 particular episodes in season 1, characters that definitely could have prevented what happened or gotten themselves out of the situation because they had the power to do so, they just chose not to for convenient reasons to keep the plot moving. But it was a very minor nitpick. It wasn't something that happened throughout the story. And again, it was a flaw that might have distracted me a little, but the rest of everything was so great that it didn't matter. I still give this, 4 out of 5 stars in my opinion. But yeah, if you're looking for loopholes, if you go into this thing trying to find plot holes and loopholes, good luck to you, because, like I said before, just the way they do the world building, you're not so sure about loopholes, because a lot of things just aren't quite explained. Yeah, so go into this looking for loopholes or plot holes, if you will, and you're going to be really confounded by them all. This isn't the type of story for you if you're looking for that, because this is more of a comic booky, wacky, kind of don't worry too much or think too deeply about it, just go along for the ride. it's not something where you're going to enjoy it if you're looking for plot holes. 1 star, it seems like an unnecessary story. The acting is also bad because it's too sympathetic. Then they follow the sympathy with anger and violence. It's definitely not binge worthy. Well, yeah, from episode to episode, it kind of does thematically shift a bit. Like, you might start out thinking that this is going to be one type of story, and then 2 episodes later, it's a different type of story. You know, you've gone from sentimental exploration of a character's addiction to all of a sudden you're back into, you know, whimsically killing people in a different episode. So it kind of from episode to episode shifts where it is. You know, again, it's not for you. If you're looking for something that sticks with the same thing and goes all the way through with the same feel, the same mood, and the same theme, it doesn't do that. It kind of goes all over the place. But 1 star, no. 3 stars, it's okay, I guess, but I don't really get what the hype is about. Well, you know, that's like your opinion, man. You could say that about anything. I'm looking for a little bit more detail. 1 star, yeah, that's Spanish, so not going to try to translate that. Again, we're seeing page after page of 4-star reviews here. It's not like the critics are saying this is certified fresh and the people are saying it's garbage, like as in the case of a lot of other things lately. Pretty much everybody's agreeing with the critics that this is fantastic. But let's check this 3-star from June 11. Not exactly groundbreaking, but hard to put down either. From start to finish, it definitely does its best to try and keep you glued to your seat. Whether it's getting to know the rather personable characters, the usual humor, or simply the comic book story brought to life, yeah, there are plenty of stereotypes and cliches, crazy killers, hopeless addicts, and two-faced in all aspects bigots, like the one that's female and hates men, but she was married to a pig, so it's okay. Yeah, again, it's like there's a lot of different things thrown together into this. You know, there are stereotypes. If you take any of these things out separately, they're stereotypes, cliches, and you've seen them a million times before. But the way they're put together, the way it works, the way it's glued together by a great story that sucks you in, together, this is like, it's fantastic. But yeah, break down its individual ingredients, and there's nothing you haven't seen before in a lot of other stuff that's even more popular. But that's not a flaw here. That's just you're trying to deconstruct this stuff and then say the whole thing is not good. No, no, no. You look at the totality of this, all these different ingredients you've seen a million times before, they work fantastically. That's why everybody's binged both seasons of this thing. Again, we're into, well, okay, here's a half-star review, so I'll entertain this. The Umbrella Academy is so bad. It's a trash, a garbage, a ton load of crap. I hate the plot, the characters, the music, and everything else. I really hate the fact that I finished all 10 episodes of it. Worst series I've ever watched. That sounds like sarcasm, because if this was as bad as they're saying, but they had to sit through all 10 episodes, right. And the last time I accidentally touched a hot burner on the stove, I just had to put both my hands and my face onto it. I couldn't help myself. Yeah, right. So I'll take that as sarcasm, but it's a good attempt at sarcasm. Half a star, okay. But let's take a look at, maybe we really should take a look at season 2, because I want to see, you know, my main question. It's got 89% on the tomato meter and 89% on the audience score. Small number of user ratings so far, but growing, because as of an hour ago, it's gone up almost 100 user ratings. So people are finishing it as I speak. I finished it 2 days ago. It's got a bigger score, but let's see if the wokeness factors into the reviews. I want to see if, you know, all the YouTube videos out there telling me how they're just so offended about all the wokeness in it. I want to see if, you know, I see any of that in the user reviews, because I suspect I'll see a couple, but look at those scores. Audience scores even higher than season 1. We'll see, and we're going to see, because I'm going to come down here and where are the audience reviews? I will find them. You know, it's been a while since I've done this. Here we go. Critics reviews. Audience reviews. Now let's see all audience reviews. I should have been prepped a little more, of course. Again, 5 stars, 4.5 stars. Let's read the first 5 star, shall we? 2 hours ago. The Umbrella Academy is an incredible series. There are several twists and turns, making people anxious to know the end and who caused the end of humanity. In addition to having a very different story, it ends up attracting the viewer's attention. Well, I disagree. I don't think the story is very different. In the first series, you had an apocalypse that they knew was coming and they were trying to stop it. They kind of disregarded the whole mystery of, where they came from and went right to this apocalypse that was coming and how they were going to stop it and who was going to cause it, etc. In the second series, it's basically the same in that regard. There's another apocalypse coming, caused obviously by something totally different and playing out totally differently. Um, but again, they're there to stop it, and everything they do in the story, what's driving the plot, is their attempt to stop this new apocalypse. And they're back in time in the early 1960s trying to stop this new, different type of apocalypse. So it's not that different at all. The different thing is that it focuses on, it goes into racial politics and it goes into gay politics and the whole wokeness factor, if you will. That's where it really is different. But no, it's still basically trying to stop an apocalypse. And again, it's completely, as in season one, season two is completely forgotten completely about, the origins of all this, where these superpowered individuals came from in the first place. Totally forgot about that. That's what I consider the real flaw to it. But let's go down. We're looking for lower starred reviews, and here's a 2-star from 2 days ago. I thoroughly enjoyed season one. That said, season 2 was terribly disjointed and poorly thought out. The farm storyline was nonsensical and added nothing to the narrative. You can tell the showrunners are out of ideas and didn't expect the second season. I'll largely agree that the farm, Vanya being on the farm and having the gay romance with the woman, that really didn't contribute anything to it. It didn't change Vanya in any way. It didn't show us anything we haven't seen before. Yeah, I kind of wonder if it was filler material myself. And, that's what other people have really criticized about it on YouTube too, is that it was just it got boring for them. They almost wanted to skip the stuff. If they watched it a second time, they would definitely skip over the stuff where Vanya was on the farm, having the little romance plot, and the husband got onto it and he wanted to get rid of Vanya because she was threatening their marriage. Yeah, I don't think it contributed that much to the story either. They could have shifted it to somewhere else, but again, somebody wanted to go into this. Somebody wanted to have Vanya have this gay romance just for the sake of it happening, because it didn't really teach us anything. Again, it's kind of like the stuff about the civil rights stuff thrown in, and the segregation and the segregated lunchroom scene. Again, this is stuff we all know happened. It's stuff from history. It's stuff every child learns in school, even today. It certainly was when I was in school in the 70s. It's nothing new, and it doesn't show us anything different. And you take modern characters and you put them back in time to experience segregation and experience, I guess, what you could call homophobia to a certain degree. That's not anything we can't see modern characters doing in the modern world. It doesn't show us a different angle on it. It's not taken advantage of to show us anything new in the story. So if somebody were trying to teach the audience something through this wokeness, they failed, because it just was there. It didn't contribute to anything. It didn't give us anything new. I would think what would have given us something new in season 2 would have been having the villains take the side of, the segregationists in the early 60s, have that factor into the bad guys. But it didn't really. You had your bad guys and your good guys, and all this other woke stuff thrown in really didn't have anything to do with it. They were just side plots, side characters that were in there to show you the stuff going on. But again, it's stuff we've seen before, and another point I'd like to make is, how come every time, in the last 5 years, every time the producers of a show want to show us some woke stuff to teach the audience a lesson somehow, we have to keep going back to the 1960s? If there are all these problems today, why don't they just show us this stuff in the 2020s? Why do we have to keep going back to the 1960s to have lessons on racism? This is it's not hitting. If they're trying to teach people something, they're poking at the wrong places, because this is old history that fewer and fewer people even have actual memories of. Again, I was born in 1970 and I don't have any direct memories of any segregation. This is like before my time. So why don't we explore these things in the modern world? But nope, again, they keep having to go back to the 1960s to show us this stuff, and it's teaching us nothing. But anyway, that's an aside. We're supposed to be talking about the show. So again, I'll read another 2-star. We're on season 2, mind you. 2 stars from 2 days ago. As someone who felt season 1 was an absolute triumph, I am sad to say that season 2 felt stale. Allison and Vanya's subplots are the high points of a season, otherwise lost in its own desire to be punchy and quippy and shocking, but with little that actually lands. The bombastic opening scene is a riot, but the season fails to live up to that moment. Thankfully, there's a fun tease of what a season 3 might look like, and it could be a return to form. Well, I will agree with them on one thing. The first opening scenes of season 2 are fantastic. I was blown away. That was incredible. It showed us things we hadn't seen before. It did it perfectly. It showed that it had a higher budget. They put a lot of effort into it. The music, the score was fantastic. And then, yeah, it was hard for the rest of it to live up to what season 2, episode 1 had shown us when it opened. I was also hoping it would reach that high again, and it didn't quite. But again, it had me sucked in well enough to watch, to binge the whole damn thing. So again, I'll give it 4 out of 5 stars for season 2. But they're right. It did not hit the high of the opening episode. It did not. That was a little bit disappointing. Again, I don't think that's going to bring this down to 2 stars. No way in hell. Season 2 was even better than season 1. It really was. 5 stars, 4 stars, 3 stars. While some characters have better storylines, the entire show feels lazy. It got lazy when you're on the farm with Vanya and stuff. It didn't give us anything there. It didn't contribute to the plot. And the final confrontation, I will agree also, the final confrontation with all the Time Commission agents kind of zapping in or beaming in to face off against our heroes. That was a little bit copy-paste lazy and kind of reminded me of stuff that J.J. Abrams would have done, you know, stuff he did in Star Wars and Star Trek. It was lazy, it was flashy, it was expensive, but it was lazy and it wasn't as satisfying, it wasn't original. It was what I call copy and paste lazy. But again, it wasn't enough to drag the show from its 4 stars for me. But it could have been better, I'll agree with that. 2 stars 2 days ago. The second season was a major disappointment for me. What I disliked in short: 1. The series turned into an extended whiny family therapy session. Yeah, it kind of did at parts. It kind of did. Number 2, long drawn-out soap opera love subplots without all the time given to romantic relationships. The season's plot would have been tighter, having just 8 strong episodes. Yeah, it wasn't just Vanya on the farm. It was also Klaus with his lover from Vietnam that he couldn't stop obsessing over, and he had to visit him when he was still in high school. And it also didn't contribute much to the plot, and it also didn't contribute to changing Klaus to give him some kind of change in his story arc. It was just there, and it was a little bit distracting, and it was part of the wokeness too. Again, it was just weird enough and wacky enough the way it was done to keep me watching. So it was still serviceable. But yeah, I'll agree it didn't have to be there. And the overall story from first episode to the 10th would have been tighter without that stuff in there. Number 3, the villains were far more interesting than the dysfunctional superhero family members. Yeah, I'll say that the 2 Time Commission agents that we saw from the beginning, Cha-Cha and you know what, I can't remember the other one's name. They were more interesting. They had more quirks and weird stuff to them that you wanted to know more about their backstories. I found myself wanting to know more about these 2 killer time agents, these Time Commission agents that were the bad guys to our heroes. After a few episodes of them, I wanted to know more about them and how they came to be than I did about a lot of our heroes. So I don't think that's a failure. I just think it's they should have paid attention to the heroes as much as to those villains, but I liked what they did with those villains. I found them very interesting to watch. I hadn't seen villains treated like that in a long time. I mean, it's been done before, but it hasn't been done enough. And for me, it just kept me wanting to see more stuff with the villains, with these assassin villains. But anyway, 4, unnecessary and excessively loud musical segments. Well, no, I don't think so. I think it worked perfectly. Again, if you didn't like what they did with the score and the musical segments in this show, you sure as hell didn't like it in Guardians of the Galaxy, because that's where it was done for the first time that I've seen. Um, that's a matter of personal taste. I thought here it was the only time I've seen it done since Guardians of the Galaxy that it worked. It worked fantastically. So I completely disagree on that. 2.5 stars. Disappointed in season 2. It really drags and only rallies at the end. Number 5 is the best thing about the show. Yeah, I'll say he had me convinced. The kid who plays number 5, you know, I haven't seen him in anything else. I haven't seen most of these actors in anything else. 2 of them I have. One of them, you know, the actor that plays, you know, the alien proprietor, the father of them all, the guy that started the Umbrella Academy. I can never remember his name, but I've seen him in a fantastic volume of sci-fi, horror, and fantasy shows, TV shows, movies. Um, in any case, most of these characters are heroes I hadn't seen in anything else before, and except for Ellen Page, I'd seen her in the X-Men. But the kid that plays number 5, he did such a good job that I almost thought that he was an old man. And when I thought of him as an actor, I almost thought, you know, I'd be looking for an older guy, you know, a 50-something actor, because he really pulled it off. I mean, number 5, he had me convinced he was an old man. He's in a child's body. It's a child actor. But wow, you know, I was thinking he was an old man, that it was an actor, old man playing him. He did such a great job. So yeah, number 5 is the best thing about it. But you know, the rest of it doesn't suck either. So, you know, 2.5 stars, no way. The show is way better than that. Uh, half a star, I find the cast not very believable. Well, then you find comic book material not very believable, because in a comic book story, this was very believable. You know, the way it unfolded, despite not having a lot of explanation, technical detail, and leaving a lot up to your assumptions and imagination, it was still very believable to me. As far as in the world that it was set in. 3 stars. I hate Vanya. She nearly killed over 10 billion people now. Her powers are all over the place. She can shoot energy, which is fine, but now she can bring people back to life and give them powers. Doesn't this just make Klaus useless now? She also went back to say goodbye to her family instead of trying to save the world. She uses her powers to get what she wants. Just unlikable in this season. Luther is good in this season. Klaus and Ben are the best yet again. Diego is good. 5 is good. Well, yeah, I'll agree that, again, it doesn't have a lot of limitations. The world building doesn't give you limitations on powers. It doesn't give you explanations for how the powers work exactly. So yeah, you're not going to get, she might appear overpowered. They kind of do like Harry Potter does, like they just introduce new powers and abilities into things, like to get people out of problems. That's why this is very much like a fantasy in its own type of genre. And if you don't like that, you're going to find plot holes. You're going to find it a flaw. But story-wise, it wasn't a flaw. Story-wise, it all worked. It was engaging. It kept you binging it. But yeah, there's a lot of problems. If you want to nitpick the powers that Vanya has and other people's powers, there's a lot of problems in there from a standpoint of how does it all logically work. Just again, forget about the logic. This is comic book that's meant to not have you thinking too much about the logic, because if you're a person that needs that, you think you're going to watch an episode of Star Trek with a lot of technical detail, you're going to be very unpleased by this whole thing. So again, look at all the 4 and 5 star reviews. Again, we don't see any mention of wokeness. That's what I'm looking for, really. I'm not seeing anything about wokeness. Here's one, 5 or 4.5 stars. I'm a male in my mid-50s who started watching season 1 when it was recommended by a friend. I never thought I'd enjoy this type of show, but I was hooked. Season 2 is also excels. The characters are developed, societal biases, homophobia, and racism are exposed, and it will leave you hanging for season 3. Well, they're not really exposing, I'll disagree in one regard. Like I said, the homophobia and racism, there's no real purpose to it. They don't really expose anything. We've seen all this before, thousands and thousands and thousands of times before. We are in the early 60s. You're in a segregated area of the United States, in Texas, which isn't really the deep South, but yes, parts of Texas had segregation. Um, there's nothing new here. You don't take these new modern characters and put them back there and then do anything with it that teaches us anything. It doesn't result in the modern characters. For example, Allison becomes part of the civil rights movement in Dallas, but this doesn't change her in any way. She's not showing anything she didn't know before from school lessons, and she experiences it, yeah, but she doesn't experience anything that changes her in any way, really. It's just a wasted opportunity. I mean, if you took me back to the segregated South and exposed me to all that stuff, what would I learn from it? Nothing. I would learn that I don't like it, but I already know I don't like it. Would it change me? Only if I were put in a situation that I hadn't thought of it in a way before. But in this story, Allison doesn't nothing happens to her or the other characters in which they see a different angle that they knew of from before, from their history lesson. So again, it doesn't expose anything, it doesn't accomplish anything, it just like distracts from the tightness of the story. But again, it's not enough to ruin the show. It's just something that didn't have to be there. But again, I'm looking for comments on, was somebody rubbed the wrong way by having the gay subplots and the racist subplots put in there? Did it overwhelm everything else? And I don't see a lot of that here. Nobody's saying that that's ruined it for them. These are real reviews. I'm hearing a lot of people on YouTube say that, it just like set them off about how woke season 2 got, but I'm not seeing any of that in reviews. These aren't fake reviews. If somebody wants to say they are, they're out to lunch. Seeing nothing but 5-star reviews. I've got a 2-star, but let's see what they say. The best thing about low expectations is that you're less likely to be disappointed. Because of this, season 2 of the Umbrella comedy was bearable, even though it had a weaker story and was even less satisfying than season 1. Completely disagree on that. Season 2, it's not just my opinion, everybody else seems to agree season 2 was superior to season 1, but let's continue. Reviving your main villain for an encore that lasts an entire season is just lazy writing. The silliness of some of the out-of-the-blue character developments was insulting. The off-screen death of Agnes and the cheap offing of Hazel felt forced and unnecessary. Those are criticisms, but nothing about wokeness, right? Like, I didn't hear one word about SJW stuff. Again, I'm not seeing any of that. Here's 0.5 star. So many problems, I can't watch this. Luther is strong, but not stronger than his normal brother or the normal assassin who picks him up and body slams him. Okay, here's a critique I have. There were no limitations established on, were these Time Commission assassins like Cha-Cha and her partner, or his partner, did I confuse the names? In any case, were the Time agents, the Time Commission agents, were they superpowered or were they just really tough? I mean, they fought and got pounded and beat up and all these things done to them by the heroes, and yet they always just came right back with minor scrapes and complaints about what had happened. And it wasn't clear to me whether or not they were superpowered or they had healing abilities or just what was going on with them. And a lot of the stuff in the story is like that. They don't really tell you these limitations. They don't give you a baseline on, well, just what are people's powers and what's going on. They keep showing you stuff, so you're left to piece it together for yourselves as audience members, and this works well enough to keep you sucked into it. But if you're looking for answers on, well, how can somebody get hit by a car and then it obviously, put them down for the count, maybe killed them, and then a couple episodes later they're just kind of limping back to fight you, and do they have superpowers, or somebody healing them, or did it not hit them as hard as we thought it did, or you know what I mean? And there's a lot of that here. So I'll agree with that. But let's read on. Are monkeys stronger than humans? Why am I supposed to care that Diego's ex died? He's a dick and I know next to nothing about here. Why did he kill his mom but pretend to not want to kill her? Also, how did Mary Blige get behind to shoot her in the back? Yeah, Mary J. Blige plays one of the Time Commission agents, the assassins that we see from the beginning. Very ruthless, very unsympathetic. She's one of the worst ones, the most the most closest to being an evil character, a bad guy. Um, yeah, we don't know like just what her powers are. Does she have powers, or is she just real lucky? Is she just good at fighting? Is she just really tough? I mean, we don't know these things, right? Because the world building just leaves this up to our imaginations. It's a flaw, but I get where they're going with this. But again, they mentioned so many plot holes, and again, if you're looking for plot holes, this ain't the show for you. Don't even try to watch it, because you have to kind of suspend your whole thing about plot holes and just enjoy it. If you can't, this isn't going to work for you. And I think that's a good way to sum this whole thing up. I think that the scores are respectable. I think that they're accurate. This is a rare case of the audience and the critics agreeing. I agree with this completely. I recommend this show in its entirety. I recommend binge watching it. If you like to binge watch stuff, you'll like to binge watch this. And I think, though, again, if you're looking for something that doesn't have plot holes, if you're the type of person that wants to nitpick the logic, if you can't get into it by the end of season 1 or 2, episode 1 or 2, then don't hurt yourself trying to go through it. You're just going to get angry, because this is not that kind of story. It's not designed to resolve all the loose ends. It's not designed to have flawless logic. It's not designed to be, to have withstand people sitting around and trying to nitpick its flaws. It's not designed for that. It's designed to be a hell of an enjoyable ride, to be binge watched, and crack open a beer and enjoy it, or your drink of choice. No alcohol required, though. It's fantastic. I highly recommend it. And I'll just conclude by saying that to the people that say the wokeness in season 2 just overwhelmed it, again, you're justified in a lot of things, in a lot of programs. If you want to talk about Doctor Who, or you want to talk about the newest iteration of CBS's Star Trek, I'm all there with you. The writing is so bad in those shows now and those franchises that any wokeness in there is going to piss people off, because it overpowers the shitty writing. In this case, yeah, it's got some wokeness in there that doesn't serve anything, but the writing is so good, everything else is so good, it's not a problem. This is a minor inconvenience, and, just don't have such a hair trigger going into this thing. The bigger problem are all the plot holes and the fact that you're expected to use your own imagination to resolve things that don't normally work out, explanation-wise. So I highly recommend this, and don't let YouTubers out there that are right about a lot of different things try to scare you away from watching this, because their actual criticism got me into this, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. So I'm signing off until I'll probably return with a proper episode of Rotten Reviews, because this isn't one of those. I recommend this show again, and have a good one.